Hi again. This is a short chat on reading online. I asked folks in the course to take a look at about four links last week, and delighted to see people did that and were able to incorporate some of those ideas into their blog post. I thought I would follow up reading your post and kind of reflecting on some of the reading and give you a few of my own thoughts coming at this from an online instructor's point of view. So, when we build a course or even just ask students to interact with a text to some degree, um, first off, a couple things come up. One's kind of the cynical approach of that you hear all the time. Oh, students just won't read this. Students don't read today. People will just glance at it, and that'll be the end of it. Um, the other question that comes out is, should they even be reading this? Should we assign this reading? Should we just have people do a general kind of explore the web and find something helpful, which I do on occasion? Um, and is this material truly valuable enough to ask them to read? So it's two ideas to think about, and I think to evaluate before asking people to read things. Maybe partly making an assumption a bit that they may not read the text, and they may not necessarily need to read the whole text to get the point and to learn what we want them to learn. So, as online teachers or teachers who are using online components, I think a few things need to be probably in your forefront to really make the sense that sometimes things won't get read, and there's a lot we can do to really encourage people to read the content that we really want them to see and engage with, because it's to put content out there in a course or have a link that you're offering people clearly goes with the assumption that that link is actually worth looking at, that it's something you want people to engage with and learn. So there's some things we can do. One is, as a teacher, to understand the impact of clutter and distraction. And sometimes the way a link comes up is just not helpful for good literacy practices, for encouraging people to spend the time to read, even if they are top-notch readers. A text that is just screen end to screen end, small type, is just not helpful for anyone. So think about what clutter looks like on screen and what's distracting if it's coming with a slew of ads or a slew of steps to get through the text. It may not be helpful. Understand also the difference in reading. Sometimes, as in that task to look at those four posts, I was pretty free in terms of exploring rather than read each of these posts. So sometimes it's helpful to tell people you just want them to look this over, especially as I've done, given a link to a 400-page study. I know some teachers would be just, or students would be just, crying to think they're about to embark on a 400-page thing. Sometimes we just want people to skim something, look it over, glance at it, find what you can take away from that text. Sometimes we definitely want people to read things, and that's where being really clear in expectations comes through. There's also, a potential contradiction or a potential conflict, I guess is a better word. We might want to offer people choice in reading because research tells us that choice is a motivating factor. It's very helpful when people can come at a selection of readings and pick what works for them. Um, it is also helpful in terms of approaching people's different reading interests, skills, um, whatever. But sometimes offering a choice can also be overwhelming. And I've certainly been guilty of that at times, offering, just crazy amounts of choice. And people come away having browsed a half dozen things, but not really getting much out of it. So we've got to be clear. Maybe we want people to read one thing and then choose from something else, some other list. When we're talking about reading online, thinking about simplicity of design is tremendously helpful. And if you are building resources, or when you are next week, that's something you'll really want to think about. Have you produced 2 pages of instructions, or have you boiled it down to, a quick list of statements? Um, Definitely avoid overuse of bolds, the crazy fonts, cowboy fonts, or impact or things, and watch the colors. I've seen online courses um, that have included, blocks of text in pink or green, and your students may not be reading on a computer screen. They may be reading this on a phone or on an iPad. And so simplicity works best. Helvetica's, very plain fonts. Um, I feel kind of radical and on the edge with these crazy little stars and this font I'm using, but I think I was just working off a basic design. Remember, white space is helpful. If you can avoid having blocks of type, huge blocks of type, people will find things much more approachable if they can see some white space and sort of see some openness in their reading. And finally, guide people through your text with really clear patterns. If you think about reading online in terms of navigating lists or chunks of text, it's much easier to see how people can be guided through a page that way. Lastly, consider, and you'll certainly want to do this through the course. How do you know people read? Was there a task, and was the task meaningful enough that they actually truly did have to engage with the text? And do they know that? Do they know that they actually had to engage with this text, or they won't have done a good enough job, or have been able to pull their own in a conversation if they just flipped open a link and closed it again? Asking people to actually do something with the reading is tremendously helpful. It often makes them go back and again to the text to make sure they really got it before they start engaging with things. And finally, not like I'm thinking of consequences, but what happens if they didn't read? Um, could they not do as well? Would they have had to ask a question? Was there something that might have to make them reconsider that approach? Or was there an opportunity for them to access uh, the knowledge in that text in some other way? And that again goes to universal design. Okay, I'm trying to keep these talks kind of short. So I'm going to wrap this one up as well, and we'll be talking about this sort of reading information throughout the course. Hit any questions, just drop a question in if you want to get a conversation started. I'm glad to do that. Thanks.